Can you hear me? Yes. Let's see if this works. Well, hello everyone. My name is Sofia. I'm glad to be here. This is my first time at the Selenium Conf and the Appium Conf. Also first time in Valencia. I speak Spanish, así que muy feliz de estar aquí. Gracias, Diego, por la invitación. So my talk today is not going to be about tools. I think there's enough talks about that and amazing speakers I saw yesterday. I think my talk is more about the fact that we are at an inflection point in our profession, in the QA community. I think, again, this had happened in the past. So it's more of a reflection where I think that the industry is going and how I see the future of quality. Let's use this one. Before I get started, a quick intro about myself, and thank you, Diego, for the kind words. So yes, I've been actually, I think I took many different roles over my career. I have a bachelor in computer engineering. I joined Abstracta, which is a consulting company in quality engineering in 2013. I started as a performance engineer. I then changed to do some test automation. I did functional testing, security testing. I was a QA manager for a while. Then I took some time off. I founded a startup, also in the software testing space, specifically around mobile performance. That was AppTeam. That's also where I met Diego for the first time. And I would say, like, since that time, I've been involved in AI and QA, both from a product perspective, like how can we use AI to make mobile testing more effective, and especially testing user experience, but also in consulting, right? So most of the things I'm going to share today come from that experimentation that we did, both at a product level, but also like in every customer that we work with, and a few learnings on where we are seeing the biggest gains from AI. On a personal note, I'm a mom. I have a 2.5-year-old who's here with me in Valencia. He loves cleaning, cooking. He's having a great time enjoying all the jamón ibérico and paella he can eat. And I also have a border collie. She, very high intensity dog and loves ice cream. As Diego said, I'm Latina. I'm originally from Uruguay. I spent 5 years living in San Francisco, and then I moved to Canada when I live now with my family. So I've been, all over the Americas in a way. So enough about me. Let's get to work. Peter Drucker wrote a book in 1999 called Management Challenges for the 21st Century, when he mentioned that in the 20th century, the biggest productivity gains came from manual work, and that in the 21st century, so our current century, the main gains will come from productivity of the knowledge work, or the knowledge worker, and that's us, right? That's the testers, developers, engineering managers. And in his quote, he mentioned that this was one of the biggest contributions that management was going to do in this century. And this was written 27 years ago. If I look at the numbers, a lot of the countries in the last 20, 30 years haven't really improved productivity as a metric. So I think this is a very interesting time to think about how do we increase our productivity using AI. And I don't think this is a management challenge anymore. I think in a way, if you've been in the world outside these past months, unless you've been in a cave, you probably heard about AI agents and orchestrating agents and delegating tasks to agents. And I think all this are activities of managers. So I think this is not a leadership problem anymore. I think this is a productivity problem that we're all part of. And even myself, I've been thinking, how can I be more productive using AI in my CEO role? So I think this is very relevant for where do we find, first, how we measure productivity, and second, where do we find the biggest value when it comes to quality and releasing high-quality software. Something else happened in 1999. The Wachowski filmed a movie that probably many of you have seen. At least I have seen more than once. Do you know which movie that is? That was released in 1999? Yes. The Matrix. So The Matrix and Drucker, I think they were both, in a way, asking the same question, which is what happens when the systems we built outpaced our ability to understand them. And I think this is happening right now. And not just with LLMs. I think this is happening right now with how we are developing software, right? I work with companies that they're generating 80% of their code with AI today. And what I'm saying is that they don't really understand what's happening. They're delegating so much to AI that they don't know what we're building, right? And I'm talking about actual applications that people are using. So I think it's a very valid question to ask today, especially when it comes to software quality. If we don't really understand what we're building, then how are we going to know that we're going to release software with confidence, with high quality, right? And I think the question is even bigger than that, and it's been around a few centuries with humanity. How do we make sense of this technology, of AI, in a way that makes sense for us, humanity, in a way that protects the activities and the tasks that we still add value and where we find purpose in our work? I think many people I talk lately, they feel a bit lost on like, where should I grow in my career? Like, am I gonna be relevant or not? Where do I add the most value? How should I like train myself? Where should I study more to like, be part of the world in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So I think this is a very valid question to think, and I want you to live with that as well in this talk. And as I said, I think in the last 6 months, every conversation that I have with CTOs, QA managers, even CEOs, is around like how they're using AI and how they're measuring the impact of AI in their teams, especially in their testing teams. And many times they ask me this question, are you measuring how much time your testers are saving? As if that was a way to measure that we're being more productive, right? And I think this question is wrong in the sense that it collapses the whole conversation into hours saved, but it's not telling us if we're being more productive, right? Actually, I see people saving a lot of hours in our company, and they're just like doing more things on top of that. They're not like going home earlier, right? So it's actually not telling us if we're being more productive or not. I think a better question would be something like this. Does AI help our people understand more and decide better, especially when it comes to the release decision? Are we ready to ship or not? And if I double click on this, I think a better way to put it would be, did AI help us define the right task, find the right information, apply our judgment, and then make a decision? Because we need all those steps to make better decisions, right? And in the knowledge work, and again, this is us, this is the type of work we do, I think defining the task is actually part of the work. And it's not easy. I work with enough teams to know that they don't really understand like what they are supposed to do at the end of the day, right? They know like I was hired to write more automated tests, right? I hired this vendor to help me increase my test automation coverage. And they believe that that's the actual task, right? If I get this task right, then like I'm doing a good job. I'm actually adding value, right? And I'm pretty sure most of you have realized that this is not the end goal, right? I work with teams when they have all their tests running in green and they have terrible quality. And I work with teams when they have many tests in red and their quality is pretty good. So this doesn't actually tell us by itself, right, that we're doing a good job, that we're actually providing good feedback to the rest of the team, to the business, on like where we are in terms of quality. I even had a conversation, I think it was 3 months ago, with a QA manager at a fintech company, and he told me something like this, like, we finally got to automate all the tests we wanted for years, like thousands of tests with AI. We can't run them. There are too many tests to run before every release, so that's a bottleneck now. And he also told me they were still having a lot of critical bugs in production that weren't being caught by the test regression suite. So they optimized, again, a task that they thought was the end goal, that they realized it wasn't the best. And I think what they were missing is thinking about what do I actually want to know for each release, right? And again, defining the task is part of the work. Like, this is not easy. I know, I've been working with enough teams that answering these questions, it doesn't come straightforward, right? So what the task actually is when we are releasing, knowing what changed from the last release, knowing what could break, knowing what matters the most to our users. Don't forget about our users, right? And answering the question, are we ready to ship? And again, I don't think these are easy for many teams to answer, but this is part of the work that we should be doing to actually add value. And again, related to productivity, I'm going to mention some metrics that we can measure. And when it comes to making decisions, if we want to make better decisions, right, having the data only, or it's not enough, right? And I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by this. So let's imagine we work at a payment startup, and at the data level, so this is our QA dashboard, we know that 120 tests have passed. That's all we know, it's a number. Then when we add some extra information, we know that it was a payment regression suite that passed, right? So we know a bit more. We still don't know if it matters or not for this specific release that this payment suite passed. When we get to the knowledge level, and this also knowledge from different team members, understanding more that what changed from the last release, we identify that actually the highest risk is in the refund logic. That's another part of the product, not related to the payment functionality, and that functionality has weaker coverage, so it's not being covered by our current testing, and also it had some incidents in production. So we realized that with the knowledge we have today, we actually shouldn't release, or at least a decision made by a human is that that logic should be validated by a domain expert, right? And what we see here that there's a lot of data that we can have, but if we don't have a way to synthesize this, and actually we don't have a way to understand and have knowledge of what's actually happening, we are not getting better at the decision layer, right? And I think AI today, what's doing is generating a lot of data, but we don't have, at least not until today, better ways to synthesize that data to make better decisions, right? And I see even that all the data we have sometimes doesn't actually fill up the gaps that we have in knowledge, right? So this model has been around for 40 years, it's not new, but it's actually my thesis for what I call quality intelligence. So what if we have AI, and specifically AI agents, that could help us synthesizing data to make better decisions, right? And that's what I'm going to show now. So in practice, what quality intelligence looks like, for me, it's 3 layers that are always connected. The first layer is the systems. This is what the software is doing. This is the engineering world we all live in. This is the code, the test. We automate the APIs, traces, environments, etc. This is what most of us know about, right? Our everyday. Then there's the context layer, and this is why the software matters, right? Why the software matters for the business in the first place, what it's supposed to be doing, it's in meeting the requirement, does it reflect the business rules? If we are operating in certain market regulations, do we actually meet those regulations, right? This also has the history of the business, like a lot of more context of the reality, right? That usually lives in people's head. Right? This is not something that today AI can know without us providing that context. And last but not least, there's the people, and that's us. Deciding what's acceptable to ship is not something that the AI can do today. I think it requires a lot of judgment, which AI is not that good at that yet. It requires accountability of a human, right? I think we've seen enough issues these past weeks where like something happened with AI, someone released code without checking, and then like whose fault it is. So it's important that the human owns that final decision. Humans understand about priorities, business priorities, things that are, like reality is complex, right? So having someone that can understand what are the priorities today, what are the trade-offs, what are we doing this, what are we not doing, where the risks are, I think it's important. And of course, ethics. And quality intelligence is a discipline of keeping these 3 layers in conversation, right? Because if you have, in a way, think about it, if you have systems without context, when we're testing, we don't really know what matters, right? Because we don't have all that business context and like what the users expect. If we have context without people, we have very well-defined work, but nobody owns it, right? And people without systems and context are making decisions based on no evidence, right? So it's very important that these 3 layers are always connected. And again, I think this is where AI can help us the most today. If we have ways to have AI agents, for example, that can connect to our systems, we can connect to the context and give the right context, and then the people are able to make decisions based on that, I think we're able to release more software faster, but also with higher quality. So what I've seen a lot is that AI is generating code, it's generating tests, in general, it's generating more output. That's probably something that most of you have felt as well. What I'm seeing that many teams are also seeing value is in using AI to reveal what they don't understand about their software, especially about a specific release, right? So a few ideas that I wanted to share with you on like how AI agents can, in a way, be also knowledge workers, so help us understand more and act as a team, like as another team member, and not just as a productivity tool. So the first one is system understanding, and this one has actually, we released an AI agent for a customer around like 6 months ago. There was in this realm where we connected that agent to a core banking system, documentation that was available, all the history of tickets in Jira, the code that was 20 years old or something, all the tests that were already generated. And what that made it possible is to have a clear understanding on when we had a failure in a test, is it a bug or not? Like answering that question was very hard for the team. So being able to answer in natural language a question about what should happen in this test, where did it fail, what methods were being used, that's super powerful, right? A second type of AI agents that we develop is for change impact, and I think this has been around for many years now. I've used several tools that helped in a way do like change impact analysis. I think now with AI, the value is bigger because we can actually connect AI to more things than just code. So we don't want to see only what changed at the code level, but what changed in terms of components, third parties. Like again, software is complex, so understanding the impact of a change is not something that was that easy and trivial before, and I think now it's available, and it's something that will help us make better decisions and answer those questions that I mentioned of what the real task is. Then we have risk assessment. Again, identifying risk and giving feedback on risk, I think, is one of the most important jobs of testing. So that's another way of thinking and using AI agents. Release readiness. We showed last week at a conference our one agent that we built for a customer on release readiness, and that was the biggest success based on what our team told us. Because in a way, like sitting next to that release decision, like are we ready to ship, and being able to answer that question, if it's either a person or a committee or a group of people deciding, we know it's not that easy in many cases. So having AI to help summarizing all the evidence that we've captured so far, again, by connecting AI to different artifacts that are part of the software development process, and all the context that the humans have on what the software should be doing and why it matters, helps a lot making that decision faster and with more confidence. And last but not least is a knowledge capture agent, and I love this one. We started actually in some teams that they were like onboarding new team members, thinking about how we could improve that process. And at the end, what we realized is like a lot of the expertise is in the people's head, and they don't have enough time to share that. They don't have enough time to sit with any new team member and kind of like dump all the knowledge on them. So having AI agents to do that, like I could like even with my voice record many things I know, and then an agent to actually put that in a markdown file, and anyone else in the team can query that. It's a very powerful way of using AI. And going back to the matrix, of those of you who have seen it, you probably remember this scene when Neo comes back from a download and he wakes up and says, I know Kung Fu. And he didn't learn that slowly. He actually absorbed all that knowledge from an expert. And I think something similar is happening with these agents that I mentioned in some QA teams that we work with. So having this knowledge capture agent, or more than one in many cases, where like the expert creates the agent with all the knowledge that the person have, for example, on that like refund logic example I gave on the payment startup, and then that is shared with other team members. So me, the person who actually knows, doesn't need to be in every conversation. We know that times are constrained in many teams now. I think this is a very powerful way to think, like I can have that same knowledge being amplified to everyone in my team. And again, context matters a lot. So if that knowledge is in the people's head and we can't share it because we don't have enough time to sit in every meeting, then we have gaps in what we should be doing in terms of making good decisions, right? And some other examples, again, this is based on, I would say, the last 6 months that work with several QA teams on how they're using AI, and in ways that is different than just generating more code, automating tests faster and things like that. So I'm going to talk about the discovery and the regression testing example. So discovery, we have a customer that's a global retailer and has, I think, again, 30-year legacy code or something like that. So usually onboarding new team members, it's a process that takes months. It's not something that's done, it's not a light process. And by onboarding, I mean like the time it takes for that new team member to have like a good mental model of what the system does, so then it can start adding value, right? Start writing tests, understanding where the gaps are and things like that. So how the onboarding process usually was is the person will start, on Monday and access, documentation. Usually it's not complete documentation and outdated, but that was still a way to get started. Review like tickets in Jira, sometimes even get some information from any observability tool that was in production. And there were a lot of interviews. Like that person will interview with their team members, other colleagues, developers, architects. Again, a lot of the information was not available unless you actually met with the person. And those interviews usually take a lot of time to schedule. So again, the whole process usually will take months. With AI agents, what changed is like we remove some dependency, especially on the people that have the knowledge. So if you have an agent that can connect to the code, the tickets, the documentation, then the person that's being onboarded from day one can start accessing that information, right? So the onboarding process was made a lot faster by not removing the need for the person to manually explore the product. I think that empirical exploration is still required, right? But then like all the interviews that needed to happen, all the conversations, reading documentation that most of that was updated, that was all removed, right? And this is not just a saved in time, also the cost went down on onboarding new team members, and then it was also easier to have different people working different projects because we were able to do that onboarding a lot faster. And then the regression testing one, it's an interesting one, and I think I had a few conversations yesterday with teams that were kind of doing the same, which goes a bit like this. So in the past, we have many examples when we were helping a team to start with test automation, right? Both like the strategy, and we're explaining them, about the pyramid. We should start automating, unit testing first, and then API testing because they're faster and stable. And then at the end, we do some UI end-to-end, but we don't want a lot of those ones, right? But in reality, what happened is they only knew like what the manual tester was saying, like manually doing the end-to-end workflow. And they had no idea with which APIs were being called in that workflow or which endpoints were being included. There was no documentation on APIs, and that still happens today. So they were telling us, like, it's very impractical for us to start automating at API level because there's so many things we don't know. So we should do UI first, and then we'll figure out the API. Like it's not a we're not going to do it. It's just not now. So we start adding a lot of UI tests to, of course, know that they were slow to run and very flaky in many cases. What happens now, right? With AI agents, what we've done in 2 customers already is we gave an AI agent to the manual tester. So while they were running that UI end-to-end test manually, the AI agent was capturing all the traffic, observing everything was happening, documenting the endpoints that were being touched in their workflow, and even like automating tests and running them, right? So that changes a lot. Something that was a black box for many teams now becomes available, and it's practical now. So we can apply good practices that in many situations weren't possible before because we just didn't know enough, right? So that's another example of how we can change the way we're working, not just because AI is helping us produce more, but because it's helping us understand what's happening under the hood. So going back to the biggest challenge that we have in this century, how do we measure productivity? And if you ask me, and this is not only for the type of work we do, but in general, if we measure productivity of a knowledge worker, I would say like quality of the work we do is potentially a good way to think about it. Unfortunately, a lot of the metrics that I see teams are measuring today are not related to quality or productivity. You've probably seen a few of this, at least I know because I talked with a few of you yesterday. I work with many companies where they're today maximizing the number of tokens they're using as a metric that's telling them that they're doing better, right? Of course, other cases, they want more automated tests. And the more they generate, the more they feel that they're being more productive. The one I love the most, which it's been around for a long time, I think now with AI came back, is a line of codes that AI is generating, right? That actually tells us a lot of how good we're getting. And of course, hours saved in isolation. What I mean by that is like if we only looked at how much time AI is saving our team without where and how it's impacting our productivity, I think it's not enough. So I call these vanity metrics. They don't really tell us if we're being more productive. And on the right side, we have other type of metrics that I would think about measuring. And again, many of these are not that easy to measure, or at least unless you already have a way to measure them, you should start thinking about how to measure them. Escape defects in production actually is a question we ask a lot of QA teams that they don't know. Someone knows in the team, they just don't know how many defects they had in the last 3 months. If you are in test automation, I would actually encourage you to ask this if you don't know, because I think this is everyone's responsibility. At the end of the day, we are trying to release software with less defects, right? So this is feedback that we all should know. Reduction rework is another way to think if we're using AI and learning from our mistakes. Time to understand a new feature. Again, this applies not only for onboarding, but things we're developing with AI today that we might not really understand what AI did. And the last reference to the Matrix, and you probably all know this scene, even if you haven't seen the movie. I think it's been used widely. This is where Morpheus shows Neo like 2 options of reality, right? Like, do you want to stay in the real world or the world where you come from, or like the Matrix, and like which is your actual reality? What do you want to see? What do you see as true? And I think this is a question that is very valid for us in many QA teams that I work with. I think like the blue pill for us would be the way we've been doing testing for the last 20 years, right? Which is familiar. I think it produces a lot of value. But we've been optimizing a lot of things, in my opinion, that are not actually getting us to release better quality, right? The red pill is, do we want to keep doing the same with AI? Or do we want to change, right? Do you want to change the assumptions that we have taken these last years and use AI in a way that actually serves a better purpose for our team, for our users, for the business? Because if we keep optimizing, for example, the amount of tests that we generate as a metric that will tell us if we're getting better in terms of quality. Of course, we can do that with AI. That, I think, is actually what's happening now. It's kind of like a natural way of keep optimizing tasks that might not be the right task for us to focus on, right? And this decision is a human decision. It's on us. I don't think AI will make this decision for us. It's more about like how we use AI. And this is not only for leadership roles to decide. I think this is for all of us because we all have critical thinking and we can go back and, in a way, challenge the assumptions that we see in our team, in our company. So I invite you all to think about this. So how we adopt AI, it's part of how I've seen teams being like more or less successful in the past months. And in many cases, what happens is that they start with individual experimentation, right? And it looks a little bit like this. We have people trying some of the AI agents available or AI chats, right, individually, and usually because they like to, they have curiosity and they want to explore by themselves. There's a lot of like experimentation and trying and failing in isolation, so there's not a lot of shared knowledge in that sense. Of course, there's no visibility or governance, and that happened in our company in the past. And I think most important what happens in what I call shadow AI is like there's no ethical guidance, and many of the individuals are making decisions based on their own gut. For example, should I paste this data in this chatbot, or should I share this document that has confidential information? Where do I draw that line, or like is this allowed or not? Am I going to expose something here that is going to put us in a very bad position? And you probably heard like there's been a lot of news in the last weeks of hackers taking advantage of how individual people in companies were using AI and allowing too much permissions to AI, right? So this is something that is risky for many companies, for us as well. I think as a company, we went through this process as well. And I mean, shadow AI, I think it's expected because when adoption moves faster than policies, that's what happened, right? People are using it, even they're not telling us that they're using it. What we are moving towards, and I would say we're not perfect as a company, where we put a lot of effort in the last year is to what we call a managed capability in terms of AI adoption, which is a structured program. We have a team we call the AI enablement team, and I think many companies have like a similar setup where they are like the coaches, they are the one who guides every project and every team towards how to use AI in the most effective way for them. It has a focus on the humans and how humans use AI, and we don't like saying humans in the loop in the sense that humans in the loop for me feels like I'll keep you in the loop. If something goes wrong, I'll let you know, kind of like second opinion, when I think the humans like us should be guiding the AI on what we want the AI to do for us and not the other way around. So we say humans at the core, and that's part of the title of the presentation. So we make sure like when we are coaching teams on how to use AI, we want to see how they feel about using AI as well. And again, there's a lot of skeptics in every team, in our team as well. So like understanding where each team member is in terms of adoption and how they feel about using AI, it's very important for us, so we know if things are working or not. Of course, having governance over like how we are using it, what we are sharing, what we are not sharing, having a way to audit when time comes, that's important. And of course, tying the outputs of AI to metrics that matter, and we call that delivery outcomes, right? And this, I would say, the last part is where we are today, that it's super hard because we have over 25 different projects. So for each project, what matters might be a bit different. And there are different stages of maturity as well. So we're getting better at that. I don't think we're perfect. But the first 4, we spend a lot of time on like sharing knowledge, what works with different team members, and having a way to track down adoption and what results we're getting from using AI. And in this journey that we built a solution we call Tero. I'm not going to talk a lot about Tero today. It is an open source project. This is what we use internally as part of our structure AI adoption programs, but also it is a framework to have AI agents that serve the purpose and the kind of the vision that I'm sharing here. Like, how do we use AI to help us understand better, right? That means that, for example, when you have a project and you're onboarding a new team member, you have already agents connected, set up with the right context to the systems that we're using, so the new team member can start using those agents right away, and they don't have to do them again. We built in some features that allows the team to test the agents they are creating. I think agents are code, so we should test it as well. And this helps a lot to put into practice how to use techniques like LLM as judge, so using an LLM to test the LLM's output. That's already part of Tero as well. And we're building, again, we're releasing new features as we see there's value for the community. We want to create this, like co-create this vision, so I don't think it's something that our company should own. And we are, of course, seeing a lot of value from customers using Tero as well as part of their like AI adoption journey. It comes with, a lot of features for like how to set up a budget per user, control costs that we know today, like tokens are getting very expensive. So that's all included as well, and it's all open source. So I invite you to check it out. And before I go to takeaways, when I work with, we have like around 200, I would say, developers, testers, test automators in the team. And every time I talk to them, I realize like the expertise that our team has is our most valuable IP. And I think this feels true for many teams. I don't think that can be replaced by AI. So my thinking is, how can we share that knowledge in a way that it still belongs to the people, so we're not replacing the human, but as I said before, like that person doesn't need to be in every conversation all the time because they don't have the time for that. And I think time is, especially these days, is becoming a big constraint. So if I have to summarize how I think like quality intelligence works in this current world, I think it's how we can share that expertise in our teams, both from like what a good test looks like to what the business actually needs. And especially like these people in the team, and probably many of you identify with them, how each of us can share that expertise. I would say we could use AI agents for that. So main takeaways. Takeaway number 1, make people more capable. I don't want to replace people. I want to make them more capable, and what I mean by that, it really depends on the role, to be honest. I put here some ideas on what I mean by more capable. For example, a tester or a developer that can see risk and handle it before QA gets involved. Many times when I work with my team and I ask them, like after they set up their agents and kind of like did the whole initial work of defining the task and what do we don't know and where the risks are, I ask them, like, do you feel more capable now? And if the answer is no, in many cases, actually, they feel fear because they have to rethink their whole, day-to-day task. I told them, like, let's go back and see, like, where we fail, right? Because I think what I want everyone to feel after, going through the process of adopting AI and creating their own agents and sharing them is that I feel more capable now. I can do more, right? I can work better. I can work faster. So that's something that I invite you all to think about. Like, you're using AI, most of you, I guess. Are you feeling more capable or not? And keep asking that because this is changing very rapidly. The second takeaway is measure what matters. I talked a little bit about measurement today already. My recommendation is to track the things in the right, at least a few of them. If you're familiarized with Dora metrics, a few of them are included here. Before putting any AI, I would say go back to core software engineering metrics and practices to see what your baseline is, so then you know if AI is helping or not to improve any of these metrics. But metrics alone I don't think are enough. So think about what you want to prove with AI, right? Like, what do we want to prove in 1, 3 months, 6 months from now? Where do we want to be as a team, as an organization? right? So these are a few ideas of things that we're working with customers and like what we're trying to prove with AI. And again, this helps a lot in getting more budget approved to use AI as well. And takeaway number 3, start small. This might seem obvious, but I think in many cases I see teams that they want kind of like fix all their problems with AI, and it feels like there's a lot to do. There's no clarity where to start, and it feels like it depends on like leadership to like tell us where we should be doing or what. And where I see like more success comes from is from actually individuals that have that agency to start like using tools and trying and experimenting and then sharing what works. So I think each of us can actually start on Monday to use AI in a way that helps us, again, understand more and make better decisions. A few ideas, pick one workflow that maybe you're part of. You don't have to own the whole workflow. It could be onboarding, it could be bug analysis, RCA, root cause analysis, whatever that you feel can add value because you don't have like a whole picture. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in many teams that we work with where I feel like this is obvious that AI can help. Many teams choose like the fun things to do with AI, which many times they don't actually solve an obvious pain, but they're just cool to work on. So my recommendation is stay away from the cool and look at those boring tasks that are important to do where AI can add a lot of value fast. Number 2, add one agent, and I'm not going to talk about which platform to use. I think there are many available, and many of you have already licenses for many AI tools. So like choose the workflow and then think how the agent or more than one agent can help you understand more. It could be like querying context, integrate into your code, your test. Very important to keep a human in charge of what I want from the agent and who's going to validate the output. And then measure. And measure the before and after, not only in terms of like what's the impact we're having in like our delivery and our quality, but again, what's the impact we're having in our team? How's our motivation? How's our well-being? Again, I think that's very important. Building software is a people problem many times, right? We don't get it right because of the people. So if our team is not feeling empowered, if it's not feeling better after using AI, then we need to look at something and change something. So track also people motivation and share what worked with your team. And as a close remark, I don't think we need more tests. And of course, many teams need more testing because they don't test enough. But in general, what I see today is like we have already optimized a lot the way we can automate tests, the way we can generate tests with a lot of human assistance. What I see the most interesting problem today to solve in QA is how do we understand more what's happening. And I think, again, this is even more relevant when AI is generating 80% of our code. So my invitation to you is use, and we know AI can do more and it's happening today, but people can understand better and these two things can be real at the same time. And they're both happening today inside many teams. And remember that decision that Neo had to make. I think that's on all of us today as well, not only the leadership, not only management. We can all have an impact in how the quality of the software we're releasing and choosing how we use AI to better serve that purpose. So my invitation is to keep the conversation going. Thank you very much.